This is the Freeheel Life Podcast, episode number 162. I'm your host, Josh Madsen, coming at you from the Freeheel Life shop in Salt Lake City, Utah. And it's a wintry time here in Salt Lake. And we're getting some big storms, interlodges up in the canyons, which is basically where they lock everybody up there. And there's been some big powder days for everybody to enjoy. So hopefully you're getting it somewhere where you are at this week as well. I know we've had some cold temperatures in a lot of the country this past week or so. So hopefully you survived. But Happy New Year, everybody. Good to be in 2023 and excited to continue bringing you my favorite Monday morning thing to do, the Freeheel Life Podcast, and talk about Telemark, talk about what's going on, and talk about a little history and gear and whatnot. So if you're new to the podcast, welcome. We hope to continue to grow this as we go into this new year, and hope you enjoy it wherever you're at in your Telemark journey. So hopping into a couple of newsroom and notes, I think the main thing is just kind of going over some of the new content that's out there, just kind of doing some call outs on that. I always think that's a good way. If you're not, I always say it on the podcast, sign up for the mailing list, yada, yada, yada. But the mailing list is a great way to stay in touch without having to scroll your social media. And we put a lot of the current content from the week. And what I mean by content is we're doing a lot of videos, especially on our YouTube channel, which has been a big focus of ours this year. As well as on our Instagram account and our Facebook and our Facebook group. So if you're not on one of those areas, you may not be paying attention to this. And I have been trying to migrate some of this stuff over to the freeheellife.com website. And that is something that you can look for in the future as well. Just trying to get it in as many places as possible. So this past week, we put up another One Hot Minute. Getting into your Telemark boots buckled and unbuckled right may seem basic and easy, but you'd be surprised. People, even experienced Telemark skiers, tricky getting into the boots. And so Miles, our shop manager, did a great job of just showing how to get in and get out. He was using a 4-buckle TX Pro, which kind of has a tricky mid strap on it at times. And but yeah, it applies to all Telemark boots. And I think there's some good stuff there. Dosty's View number 63, advantages and disadvantages of lightweight Telemark boots. He basically digs in. If you've been following Craig Dosty on his Dosty's View, a few months back he did, maybe not even a few months, might have only been like a month ago or a month and a half ago, he did a Dosty's View talking about his F1 boot modification where he added a Michael bolt-on duck butt. There's a lot of slang and lingo in there if you're a new person. But essentially he made an old, out of production Alpine touring boot that had a bellow into an NTN, New Telemark Norm compatible touring boot. And Dosty's View number 63, he follows up on that. He went skiing on it for the first time and gives a little debrief on that and how it went. His thoughts on the good, the bad, the ugly of lightweight touring Telemark. And definitely go check that out on the YouTube channel and see what you think. And then if you didn't catch last week's mailbag episode, I dug into the mailbag, answered your questions, and those are always fun because they're more anecdotal, people writing in, talking about what's going on in their life with Telemark, things they're learning, things they're experiencing, questions they have about gear, and it kind of covers the gamut of maybe what's going out in the real world, so to speak. So I always enjoy those. Other than that, we'll be open Monday, Wednesday, Friday, noon until 7 p.m., and then Saturday, 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. if you're local to Salt Lake or traveling through. Many people have come through the last couple of weeks, so we always love seeing our out-of-state customers, out-of-country customers, and we appreciate all your love and support coming to the Freeheel Life and supporting our brand and our retail shop. That means the world to us. And we had a great year. 2022 was awesome. We were able to grow, and we're hoping to do the same thing as we go into 2023. And I'm sure we'll have plenty of news and, things that are going to happen, maybe that are new for us as we head into 2023. And podcast listeners, you guys always get it first because it's a good venue where it's consistent. I know I'm going to be here every Monday, and I always enjoy sharing what's going on here. I think before I hop into the actual meat and potatoes of the podcast, also wanted to bring up Midwest Telefest is coming up. I don't have the dates in front of me. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. But I wanted to make sure that everybody knew about that. That's going on in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And you'll be able to find that up near Ontonagon at the Porcupine State Park, I guess, if you want the proper terminology. That's going to be happening February 10th through the 12th, Midwest Telefest. Great time. It's kind of I think they had like 250 Telemark skiers there last year. We've got Keith Opperman, who is our Freeheel Life Midwest representative. He's going to have our demo fleet up there, and you can definitely hit him up about that. So, and maybe you don't even have to hit him up about that, I guess. If you're going to be at the festival, it will be there. So I correct myself. But beautiful, beautiful place right on Lake Superior. I've been there. It's an amazing spot. And I would love for you to check it out too. So definitely keep that on your radar. So with the theme of the new year, that's what I'm going to talk about today. I want to talk a little bit about my Telemark wish list for 2023. I'm going to give you my top 5, talk a little bit about that. And I'd love to hear what your wishes are too. So you can email those to me at podcast@freeheellife.com. We can include them in the next mailbag episode. And I'd love to hear specifics. Maybe it's a personal goal you have. Maybe it's something you want to hear on the podcast. Maybe it's something you want to see in the industry. Maybe it's anything, ideas, stuff that you are creating a New Year's resolution for, specifically for Telemark. And I always love that. So I kind of put a little list together myself that I wanted to share. Kind of some stuff. I was kind of racking my brain, I think in 2022, I thought about doing sort of a recap of 2022 and top 5 things that have happened, something along those lines. And, as a business, it's been a great year for us. And despite all the challenges, we had the boot situation and all sorts of supply chain stuff. Despite that, we were able to grow. And I feel very grateful for that, and humbled that we can be in a position to do that regardless of some of the circumstances. And grateful that I've got an awesome team, and we've worked really hard to kind of run lean and mean this year and really make it happen. So kudos to them, and really appreciate all that they do to keep this going and protect the turn and push forward with our brand of Telemark and what we're trying to get out into the world. That's super important to me. But as far as the larger Telemark realm of things, honestly, not a lot happened. Let's just be honest. There wasn't a lot of new gear that came out. There wasn't any big changes. So I thought I'd focus more on my wish list for the upcoming year, in hopes that we can kind of settle in on a couple things. It's something we can look back on at the end of 2023 and hopefully achieve some of this stuff, if not more. Some of it we're in control of, us as Freeheel Life, and a lot of it we're not. But I think the important thing is, as a community of Telemark skiers and as us as Freeheel Life, I think what we can do is try to continue to share ideas, put stuff out there. And, I know what we're trying to do is do our best to grow slow and steady. I think that's always been our goal, is to try to influence what we can to the folks out there that like listening to our podcast, like coming to our shop, like shopping with us for the products that we're providing. Those folks that have gotten on our skis, even though they're small batch. And, I think we're trying to do our part to influence the change that we would like to see. But yeah, sometimes it's slow and steady, and we can use the community as a whole, all of you listening out there, to make sure that the other people that are in charge of other things, especially gear, because we all know that really influences a lot of what we do in Telemark, is we got to have the correct gear, and we want to see those innovations. We want to get that equipment on our feet, whether it's skis, boots, or bindings, so that we can continue to grow this thing and share it with other people. And that's kind of what my little list is going to revolve around. And let's hop right into it. So the very first thing I'm hoping to see, and this is obviously the thing that has been floating out there for years and years and years, but in 2023, my hope is that we're going to see a Telemark boot announcement. And I'm not just talking Scarpa, although I think that's where most of the whisperings are coming from, that camp. But I'd love to see something out of the crispy world as well. That'd be interesting. Just as a user myself, I'd love to see those two brands kind of get back in the arena of innovation and pushing something forward. I think a lot of people are kind of getting tired of hearing about it, and then it doesn't happen. And I understand from the consumer standpoint, it's a slog. And from, someone who deals with retail, it's a slog too. I get it. And unfortunately, I think history has proven since the invention of plastic boots back in 1992, it's always been a challenge, and it has proven not only to be a challenge, but something that can actually shut a company down. And we've seen that too, in the early 90s, there was the hope probably for another boot company, which was a Solo or Oslo, however you want to pronounce it. And actually they made an incorrect decision about how they did a boot, ended up getting all recalled, the Tele Breeze, if you're curious about what the boot was called. And we never saw another boot in the Telemark realm of things from a Solo after that, after they had been a strong leather boot competitor throughout the years. And so many great boots came out of that. But it's a slow process for a reason, and I think especially where we're at now, there's certain features that people are looking for. We always talk about the lightweight boots, tourability. The market has changed and evolved, and trying to meet some of those demands, but also looking at what is required for the general populace. I think that's really important too. And that's when you're only looking at innovating, maybe on a boot, or, I don't know how it's all going to go down, but it'll be interesting to kind of watch how it all plays out, because there's the obvious backcountry component that everybody wants to see come into the boot. And then there's the larger population of the Telemark community that honestly is in bounds the majority of the time. I'm not saying all the time, but there's also that aspect as well, as getting a boot that works for the majority of people, and it gets enough lifeblood going in the right direction that those innovations can then be applied to a larger boot line. And I think what we're seeing, and part of why I want to see this in 2023, at least the announcement of, hey, this is really happening from either of those two companies. And the reason I'm not mentioning Scott is honestly, I think they're at the end of probably their life cycle of holding on to Telemark. That's just my personal opinion. So you're probably going to hear me talk very little or at all about that company in the future, just because I don't think that they're in a position to be in this new arena of announcing new products. So, I'd love to see something from Crispy, something from Scarpa, and we'll see. So one of the things I wanted to incorporate sort of in that personal wish of an announcement is I really would like to see, not only knowing that a new boot is on the horizon, but I also would like to see it incorporate a couple things. One thing specifically I think is really on my wish list for 2023, and that is that we hear from those companies that they are looking at adding a Mondo size 22 and a Mondo size 31 and 32. And this is the reason that's such a big deal on my wish list, is because in order for this to work, innovation is great, but innovation without transition and without a transitional plan to make sure that we keep the existing people out there on Telemark equipment that is up to date and functional, it's got to fit them. And that's been the biggest worry I've had along the way as we've done NTN, is I've never heard it addressed by the companies that there is no 22 size Mondo in NTN, and there is no Mondo size 31 or 32. And I say legitimate 31 because sometimes you'll hear Crispy say, no, we have a 31, but it's a 30 shell size with a paper thin liner. So it's not a legit 31 or 32. But what that's going to require too is sort of acknowledging, the company's acknowledging that there's a missing piece here. And if we are going to shift into having these boots, which we call NTN now, I mean, essentially they're going to become Telemark at some point. The new norm will become the norm, and we have to incorporate a sizing chart that works for everybody. What that I think is what's going to happen is it's going to then push the binding manufacturers to have to create a binding that's either extra small to meet that 22 Mondo on the low end, because it fits 23 Mondo. And if you're not familiar with Mondo, I guess let me just throw that in there for anybody who's not familiar. Mondo sizing is a sizing that they came up with that is a foot measurement. And there are boot charts that kind of show you what it is, but essentially a Mondo 27 is like 27 centimeters. So it's just the length. So whether you, men or women's boots, you basically have this consistent Mondo sizing across the board. So that's what that is, just food for thought. But what I think, back to the binding, I think it's going to require a collaboration again with the binding manufacturer to create an extra small on that small end, and it's going to create an extra large NTN on the top end to cover that Mondo 31 and 32. That's the only way I can think about it, is that's what's going to happen. So that is wish list number one. Is I hope we see a boot announcement from somebody in 23 that probably will come out in 24. That's typically how it's done, or it'll be, it usually happens the following fall. But I don't know. I know things are floating out there, but I haven't heard anything official, and that's kind of what I'm waiting for. But it's my hope that they will incorporate some sort of new Mondo sizing to bring all of the community into that norm and make it work. All right, so on to number 2 of the wish list for 2023. Kind of continuing on the subject of the bindings, my hope is that we're going to see a non-touring NTN binding come onto the market or again, get announced, and I think that's what we can hope for, is that we start hearing the murmurings of something. And let me tell you a little bit why I think that's an important announcement and sort of an important part of the progression of bindings on the market right now is all of the NTN bindings that are currently on the market have a tour mode on them. All the way back to the Rotofella Freeride, Rotofella Freedom. That goes back to 2008, 2011, and then subsequent bindings from there forward, Outlaw, Outlaw X, even TTS, Telemark Touring System, Majo. All of them have really been based on this idea that the tour mode, or free pivot touring mode to be more specific, for like Outlaw X, Freedom and Freeride, and then Tech Tow Touring, and I didn't mention Lynx, but that falls in there as well from 22 Designs. Everything has had a tour mode built in, and that's great, but what I would like to see is something with a non-touring mode. So if you think on the 22 Designs front, something that goes kind of harkens back to the roots of the Vice in NTN format. And for those that aren't familiar with 22 Designs, you basically have the Vice, which is probably what at this point we would consider a non-touring binding or even a resort telemark binding. It's doesn't have a tour mode built in. The Axle, however, had the tour mode built in, much like kind of an 01 from Black Diamond back in the day. And now on Outlaw X, you've got the same base plate as the Axle, and you have the tour mode built in. Frankly, that's a great binding because you've got, most people that are skiing in resort but might not tour or might have the desire to tour at some point. That's a great binding because the tour mode's there, and if you don't use it, you don't use it. It's just kind of there. You don't have to go Telemark Tech, 2-pin Tech NTN like a Majo in order to get the NTN product. You have a cage toe, more traditional. But the reason I think a resort-specific NTN binding would be great is it's going to bring the cost down. I mean, traditionally, when you don't have that additional material cost of the tour mode, assembly's easier, it's more straightforward, and you basically just have a non-touring mode. So I'm always interested in getting the cost down lower for people that are looking to get in, because telemark is a great technique to learn inbounds, where you have the ability to take a chairlift and get a lot of repetition. And the barrier to entry, the lower we can bring it down across the board, it's more accessible not only to the consumer, but also to shops to be able to have rentals and just ease of use. There's just less going on. So that's kind of number two. I'd love to see a non-touring NTN binding. And I'll throw this little bonus in there. If that happens, I would absolutely love to see a manufacturer tackle the issue of retractable brakes. I would love to see, and what I mean is current brakes on all models of NTN bindings across the board, the brake basically fits to the outside of the ski, and when it is compressed, it comes up, but it doesn't come up and in like an Alpine binding. So super heavy on the wish list there, I know, but I would love to see someone innovate on not only the non-touring NTN binding, but I would love to see a retractable brake included in there, just because it would be nice, for those that are getting in their bindings, an easy brake to get into where it doesn't hang over the edge of the ski would be absolutely fantastic. Well, I kind of mentioned, the accessibility factor of just equipment. And that brings me to number 3. I would love to see more people try and telemark for the first time. And that has always been my hope. That's the mission of our business, is not only protect the turn so it's there when you find it, but we can help get you into it. And I think that's such an important thing. And I want to challenge all of you out there, share Telemark with somebody this year in 2023. whether you got an extra setup around, or maybe there's some available rentals in the area. If you have a friend that's interested in trying it and they want the ability to go out and do it, try to facilitate that and share it with them. I think that's sometimes the biggest holdup of growing is it's hard to get people out when they have the interest. Sort of, there's that crossroads of someone's personal interest. They see it and they're like, wow, that's really awesome. And then having the ability during that time of interest to actually get on it and have a way for someone to show them. So I know there's not instructors at every mountain. So a lot of this is up to us as a community, as people who love telemark ourselves. We've got to share the turn with our friends and our family and those that are interested. And that's my hope in 2023 is we start to see that fire that we know is out there. All of us are psyched about it, is we're taking that and taking action on it. And many of us are limited to how much we can ski. So I understand there's some time constraints on there. Not everybody has the luxury of skiing 50, 60 days a year and you're carving out a day or two to teach someone else. Maybe it's even just, another thought is maybe you see someone that managed to get the gear and they're at your local hill and you kind of see them struggling down is, don't hesitate to go up to that person or meet them in the lift line and say, hey, do you want to take a run together? I think that's the foundation of the telemark community has always been built on how friendly we all generally are to each other and our willingness to do something like that. Take a quick run, give someone a pointer, ask them first, obviously. Don't just roll up and be like, hey, here's my unsolicited advice for you to be a better telemark skier. But yeah, hey, ski up to them and say, hey, like, I saw you're trying to figure it out. You must be new. That's awesome. Do you need any pointers, or is there something like I could help you with? I've been doing it for, a couple years, a long time, whatever. And if they're willing to listen and maybe you're interested in having some help, which a lot of people are, is maybe impart some of that knowledge, pass it on. That's what Spread Telemark is all about, is spreading that message, spreading the knowledge. And it's underground, that's how this happens is we help one another and sort of figuratively pick each other up and help each other along the way. And that's my hope in 2023 is we see more people doing that, more people taking the chance to share it. And then kind of the second part of that is my hope is that old shops that used to be passionate about telemark skiing, and most of these shops out there in the United States are backcountry shops. A lot of them are mountaineering shops. A lot of them are retailers that through the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s were able to support telemark locally because as the backcountry grew, that's how people were getting into the backcountry. But what I've noticed is I've visited these shops, I've talked with other retailers. There's still incredibly passionate people in those retail shops. A lot of them are the owners, in these mom and pop shops. They're telemarkers themselves. They would love to do more telemark, but they haven't been able to maintain the resources, as backcountry. And you've heard me talk about this on the podcast, but these shops aren't to blame for not carrying telemark anymore because they traditionally, like I said, they're a backcountry shop or a mountaineering shop. There's a need for them in order to survive to carry alpine touring equipment. I mean, that fits the business model. They aren't like Freeheel Life in the sense that we have a retail front and we specialize in telemark skiing. So, I have so much respect for any retailer ever. 1, for opening a shop, 2, for surviving, and 3, for keeping it going. But my hope in 2023 is that a lot of these other retailers have the ability to take that personal excitement for telemark skiing and they can find new ways to maybe get in to carrying a little bit more equipment. They're able to update their knowledge base a little bit, and they're able to learn how to viably carry that equipment again. And the reason being is some of these aforementioned things. You need to be able to find stuff locally the minute that you have interest as a new person. You know, if you're a new telemark skier listening to this, you may be thinking the same thing. You're like, man, I totally went through that. You know, you might have even called us as an out-of-state person, and you're like, I live halfway across the country, but I know you guys specialize in this. Can you help me? And I think, you know, I love that. And we love helping people as much as we can. But for us to share this with people, I want to see those old shops find that passion again, and also find the shelf space for it just a little bit. And it doesn't take that much to get maybe a couple rentals in there, maybe a boot fleet that they can use for a number of years to get people on the hill. And then maybe they can find some time to grow their knowledge again and kind of refresh how telemark is sold. And I've always said that this whole telemark dead sort of thing that's been out there for a number of years is so silly. It's absolutely ridiculous, because there's tens of thousands of telemark skiers across the United States. And you know, again, the numbers are probably a little gray. I'm not going to lie about that worldwide. But, you know, it's obvious that if you have a local shop that has access to rentals, has a little bit of knowledge, and has the ability to get people into the equipment once they're ready to purchase, those are the areas that tend to grow. They become these little pods of telemark skiers. There's a little stronghold that builds around the shop as a center of community. So if you're a retailer out there listening, I know you have the ability to do that. And if you don't know how to do it, you know, just reach out. I'll do my best. You know, you can hit me up at podcast@freeheellife.com. I think sharing these ideas so that you can be a local hub for your community is incredibly important. Be that shop, be that retailer. And then on top of that, like I said in the beginning of that wish, is be those people. Let's be that community that shares the turn with friends and other locals in the area. And that's what's going to spread telemark slow and steady. And maybe it'll catch on and go faster. But I think we just have to just do our part. And that's what this is all about. All right, so what comes next? We're on to number 4 of my wish list. This one's a little bit different, and I wanted to kind of shed some light on this topic too, because I just talked about doing our part, right? And again, this isn't a team sport, right? This is something we do individually for the most part. But I think as a community, the things that we share with one another truly, truly influence where it heads. And so wish number 4 is that the DIY technicians tinkering do it more and more and keep pushing their ideas forward online. So what is that? You're like, who are the DIY technicians? Well, you know, we talked about this on various podcasts when I've had Craig Dostey on, and, you know, we always bring up sort of this DIY, do-it-yourself culture that exists in telemark. And this isn't something new. You know, I think it wasn't really called, I think DIY has come in vogue sort of as a phrase over the last, 5 or so years, especially sort of with like home improvement, DIY. There's all sorts of videos on DIY. But regarding telemark skiing, the do-it-yourselfers, these DIY technicians that are out there, they're out there tinkering on bindings and boots, and they're innovating on things, and, they're doing it just because. A lot of these people are engineers. They're simply out there saying, hey, I'm maybe I'm not interested in starting a business, but I'm a hobbyist and I'm interested in tinkering with things and making things better and sharing it online with other people. And this is, in some regards, it can kind of feel like you're in this vacuum and nothing's really going anywhere. You know, we're sharing it and maybe it's not being seen, but I don't think that's the case. You know, historically speaking, there's always been these tinkerers with Telemark equipment, and it goes all the way back into probably the 70s, but for sure in the 80s, 1980s, you really started seeing these innovations that were happening on the ground, on the front lines, if you will, of just local telemark skiers modifying their equipment. We've talked a lot, on some of these historical figure podcasts, we've talked a lot about boots, for instance, and the modifications that sort of came along during the leather boot era, taking old alpine leather boots, which is going way, way back, and these guys soaking them in water and then breaking them down so that they would flex properly for a telemark turn. And, eventually they started modifying the cuff of the boot with plastic cuffs from alpine boots. And what a beautiful thing, because I think that lesson learned in that era is in the mid to late 80s, you had people fastening cuffs to these leather boots. And eventually we end up with a boot called the Merrell Super Comp. And that was such a transitional boot, but it came from these DIY technicians out there. It came from telemark skiers saying, this could totally be better. I'm just going to do it myself. And I think that when people continue to innovate out there, and especially with the internet now, it's so great. There's all these, there's forums people are talking on. You see pictures popping up of people modifying bindings and creating their own. A lot of it's tech toe bindings. I'm starting to see some cage toe style bindings as well. Actually, I've even seen stuff like I was describing, like a non-touring mechanism one, which is fantastic because there's problem solvers out there that are just doing it for fun. And oftentimes when I talk to these people, they're not even looking to start businesses, but I think if the manufacturers are smart, they're going to look, and there's not a lot of them, right? But they should pay attention to the community. Not only, they need to look at a combination of what people need and then what's being made. Obviously, people can go down rabbit holes and create stuff that very few people would use in the marketplace. And maybe that makes it not a viable option or not the priority. But I really do think that do-it-yourself hobbyists putting out information and sharing that really does affect change over time. And so I'm always saying that we need to, as a community, kind of lean into that a little bit, because the manufacturers that are looking at it and are smart, I think will take notes on what's going on. And they're then going to be able to say, hey, we do have the platform to make this in more of a production sense of the product. So that's my wish number 4 is all about the DIY. And in a lot of ways, we've got to be self-sufficient out there, and we've got to support the companies that support us. It's incredibly important that we do that. And I just wanted to give a shout out to all those people that are innovating on stuff out there. I love the spirit of it, and I love the ability that these people are taking their own time, money, and they're thinking, and they're changing, and they're innovating. And that's just such a beautiful thing to watch. And that's my hope in 2023 is that we start seeing some of those things come to life. Either those people deciding to take the next step and maybe even try to bring something to market, or they're sharing it with people that might have the ability to do that because they already have the infrastructure. All right. Well, to round things out with my top 5 wishes for 2023, is number 5. I would love for this to be the year that we have the biggest World Telemark Day participation ever. And I wanted to drop this. I've been waiting until the first of the year to kind of say, hey, reminder, World Telemark Day is always the first Saturday in March in the Northern Hemisphere. This year it's going to be March 4th, 2023. If you're not familiar with World Telemark Day, this is a thing I started years ago. And I think we're year number 8 this year. I don't even remember. So much time's gone by. But it's always the first Saturday. And let me just give you the synopsis because, again, this plays into everything I mentioned, of growth, sharing the experience, meeting up with people. The reason I started World Telemark Day many years ago was, obviously being based in Salt Lake City, yes, we can go do a demo. We usually do, we're usually at Alta. We take our demo fleet up and we all celebrate telemark skiing that day. But the beauty of the concept of World Telemark Day, in my opinion, is the concept that you can do it anywhere. You can do it by yourself. You can do it with a friend. You can do it with a group of friends. If you're a marketing person at a resort, it's something you can put on your calendar. You can offer a discount on a ticket, whatever. I will be putting out the logo for this year's World Telemark Day here in the coming weeks, along with a press release. And then I will be encouraging people to email the info for their meetups so that we can spread it out there on our platforms and help people know, hey, these people are going to meet up for World Telemark Day in this part of Japan. There's going to be these people at Alta. There's going to be these meetups in Colorado, Washington, Oregon, Midwest, all over the place. But my hope is that if you're not familiar with World Telemark Day, that's the basics of it. Is March 4th, go telemark skiing. That's as simple as it gets. And you can be by yourself and you can participate on social media. If you're a social media person, hashtag World Telemark Day, hashtag spread telemark, hashtags # for all the old people. So, and that's a way to connect with people and see people from all around the world. And we're going to be doing our best to kind of cover that. But that's my final wish for 2023 is that the culmination of all these things I'm talking about is that no matter what gear you have, no matter how experienced you are, no matter where you live, we all go telemark skiing on the same day and participate as protectors of the turn and sharing telemark as a group, or being that one person at your resort and share it with people visually. Hey, I'm out telemark skiing on World Telemark Day. And it's been a beautiful thing to watch over the years as we've done this. And we hope that you'll participate and put something together. Like I said, email me at podcast@freeheellife.com for now. If you got questions, like how do I do this? There is a whole podcast that I did about this. I think I did it last year. Really kind of diving into how you can start your own World Telemark Day celebration. But, it's loose enough that you can just say, hey, we're meeting at the bottom of chair whatever at noon and we're going to go for a run. And that's what it's all about. Simplicity, ease to do. It's not hard to put together. And you can do it with your friends. You can do it with your family. You can do it with random telemark skiers in the area. And what we want to do is help get the word out for your local area as early as possible. So all of you out there that are listening, I hope you'll participate this year in World Telemark Day and make it the biggest ever. Pick your location, pick your time, and let us know about it as soon as possible. And we'll start pushing it out there, at no cost. We just want people to go do it and know that you're there. And I think a lot of people will become surprised at how many other people are in their area that want to do that as well. And if you want to do something a little more sophisticated, I can guide you through that too. Maybe how to talk to your local resort. We've obviously got 2 months and some change to kind of get ready. So yeah, that's what we're going to do. I'll be following up with that as we go along, and happy to mention it in the newsroom and notes section of the podcast on Mondays, so that everyone can get it on their calendar. You can plan to go to the meetup that's closest to you, and let's make it the biggest one ever and really bring our worldwide community together, all the Freeheel Lifers, all the protectors of the turn, and let's get it done. Okay, that wraps up my wish list for 2023. I hope all of you have put your New Year's resolutions together, and hopefully that includes a little something with Telemark, maybe something you're going to work on this year on the snow, whether it's fitness related, technique related, gear related, whatever. I hope you get after it, and I hope you have success in doing so. Stay in touch with us. You can sign up for our mailing list in the show notes. It's a great way to stay in touch about all the content that I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast. We'd love to stay in touch with everybody. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Josh Nomadson if you like to follow along. Getting out and doing some skiing lately, and always kind of got some behind the scenes stuff as well, at Freeheel Life, and just life in general. So you can follow me there. You can follow Freeheel Life at Freeheel Life across the board if you are on the social medias. Thank you for all your support in 2022. We love you all. It's been a successful year. We couldn't have done it without you. Thank you for spreading the word and spreading Telemark and helping people know that we're out here and what we're doing. You can hit up our team at customer service at freeheellife.com with questions and let them know what your needs are. And hopefully we can connect with you sometime in the new year. So until next Monday, brothers and sisters of the turn, spread Telemark always. See you later.